This is our fourth and final training session. What adjudicators are looking for. We've had three previous training sessions: Debate 101, Building Persuasive Arguments, and Effective Engagement. And if you are like Ms. Bonnie, but where are the videos? Please check your emails. We'll make sure to have sent all 4 training sessions, which will be 4 hours long. Today officially marks 12 days before VMDC. I hope that you are training. I hope that you are sparring. I hope that you are researching and you are ready for the event. Now, today we've got our final training session with TJ all the way from Thailand, who is part of our CAP. So if you're ready for a W training session with Mr. TJ, can you hit me with a W in the chat, please? Can I get a lot of W's? W's. All right. Now, please get ready as we prepare to welcome Mr. TJ, who's going to give us an amazing workshop on what adjudicators are looking for. TJ?
Yeah. Guys hear my sound? All good?
All good.
Okay, so we have about an hour in this session going on, and this is going to be a focus a little bit on explaining what adjudicator is looking for. Okay, so the first part is a small introduction for myself. I actually been doing adjudicating and debating for nearly 20 years. I actually started as a debater at a university level. I've competed for almost every format itself. I've been recognized as one of the top teams of Asia and the top 5 judges of Asia before. So it means I've judged the grand final of World University Debating Championship. I also judged the grand final of World School Debating Championship as well. So I'm one of the few Thai people that have judged both the grand final of the both World Championship tournaments. Not only that, I actually coached the national team of Thailand. I also hosted the World University Debating Championship and World School Championship twice each. So it means I've actually hosted 4 times the World Level Championship. Team Vietnam also joined that as well in the past. Okay. I have actually trained nearly 4,000, 5,000 students in critical thinking, leadership, communication, and debate. And I have done debate mission around the world. So I've been traveling about 60 countries around the world, mostly about debate practices. So that's me. Very nice to be all tonight. And I think we have a good session. You definitely can ask questions for sure. Please just be able to text it into the chat box, be able to help you engage that practice. You guys ready? You guys ready? You guys okay? Can you guys be able to send me some W's again, please, to be sure you guys are okay? All good? Okay, let's start up then. So I think the first question of all times in this debating of what judge is looking for in the first place is actually, who are you trying to convince, right? And I think a big part of this is that you have a big room like this. You have people sitting down away. A lot of times, debaters, like the speaker in blue right there, right? And you have 2 teams, opposition, government in this format, right? A lot of times, speakers think they've convinced the other team. They had to be persuasive. They had to be able to convince other side going on, right? In reality, it doesn't work that way. In reality, is that speakers would never move or swing the thought process or decision from other side, right? If your team government example, and you'd be able to persuade, talk, convince all these things going on to the side. My question is that the other side go with the government? Do you think so, guys? Do you think the government will flow? Kind of like, oh, I agree with government, no problem, and that's it? You think it's gonna happen? In debate format, it doesn't happen. In reality, is that you're trying to convince the adjudicator, the person in green, right, in this picture here going on. He is sitting down, she's sitting down in front of you, listening to your debate, right? So it means as a speaker, as your teammate, you're not trying to convince the other side of your team, but more or less trying to convince the judge going on. So that's why in this session here, we'll try to look at exactly what judges are looking for and what are the key things to be aware of as well towards your speaking, right? Now, be careful because definitely a lot of time, yes, you are going against with opposition or government in that in your opponent, but it doesn't mean you have to convince them. You have to convince the judge about your thoughts and your case you have here going. That's part one. So definitely in the entire room, many people listening, your teacher, your parents, all of these things. More importantly, it's the judge. Your job is to convince the judge. He or she or the panel of judges will be there to listen to you in the most best way possible. Okay. And that's why we have the 4 elements of adjudicator evaluation. What we just are looking at when we're in this green seat here, we're listening to you. What is coming into our mind to look at this going on? And the first part is matter. For sure, definitely matter talks about the content of what you speak, right? The well reasoning, the argument, right? The structure, the logic of those, the evidence you have. But then definitely there's a big part of it, right? The strengthening your argument. Is it clear? Is it consistent? Is it well supported in the argumentation? When you hear it, does it make sense? A lot of times when people try to convince me, try to persuade me with different arguments, I think the problem they mostly go in is that they are not convincing. They're not persuasive. They are too extreme, maybe something that's too weak sometimes. You need to be able to be much have a confidence enough to be able to explain that argument, right? That's why a lot of times when I tell my team example, you gotta be able to write your argument yourself. A lot of times when debaters happen, they just kind of like get their teammate to pass an argument to that. When you start reading an example, you don't get buy into it, right? You don't understand the logic behind inside of it. So a lot of times understanding that argument, understanding that rationale, that point of view, that logic is really important, because if you don't understand it, you can't explain it in that side. Now, another point I think that happens in debate is that sometimes, a lot of times, you guys don't tell me the logic of the argument or explain about the argument, right? There's an argument structure that I believe a lot of other sessions before this, we actually try to help you guide in the process. But sometimes you throw examples, right? You throw evidence. Oh, TJ, I will not tell about the argument. Let me show you an example, right? In this way. And you really hope the example will be persuasive and be convincing me a lot. I think it's a bit different, because in the debate argument structure we work with is in this way. It's mostly about presenting the argument, the logic, right? And providing evident example important. Now, if you're trying to think to use evidence example as a mainstream of support, also can, but it becomes messy a little bit. How can you, examples sometimes are not complete. They are time set, which mean a certain time area. They are place set. Sometimes they are work for some locations, right? Sometimes the logical of that example doesn't make all contextual linkage towards the argument or explain example. So having example or evidence a lot of times need to be thoughtful a little bit on, does the example make sense? Is it persuasive? Is it logical? Is it in the same consistency of the idea still going on? A few quick might be able to think about that idea, right? Now, I also explain this as well because a lot of times people throw examples from 1980s in tomorrow, yesterday. I'm not saying you need examples in today's modernization or this time frame. I'm saying that the example needs to be logical, reasonable, and has to be consistent with the argument you present yourself, right? Another thing as well is logic and clarity. A lot of time when you explain things, right, they get confusing, they get messy in the argument itself. And that's why a lot of times when I'm taking notes and looking at your example and making kind of confusing face, it's because I'm not understanding what you're trying to say. And that's a big problem. And you see that in the eyes of your judge, you definitely try to explain further, try to be able to give probably more detail, try to see that how clear it is. That's why I really feel that as a debater, have to be able to structure your speech, write them down to be clear enough. If you can read or explain it clearly in your mind, definitely the person hearing you as a judge will be able to actually follow it as well and be able to actually construct that idea. Now, definitely in 100%, matter, content, material, the debate takes 40% of that, right? Now, definitely in debating practices, you have to understand the world holistically, right? Researching is important, understand different things happening, what's going on, right? The motion should be that we provide for you, hopefully be meaningful. We want to actually have positive engagement, change the world, right? So definitely in the argument itself, it should not be just be all negative, right? Or just all optimistic, or just have to be a bit more realistic. The comparativeness, right? Of how this would function, how this would work. That's why a lot of times in argumentation, we look at principal arguments, which mean value arguments, right? Things that are general, understanding conceptually, right? And practical arguments that are about how would this really work in the real world. So if you have both those things, we kind of like have to cover up that you have this complete viewpoint, right? And thought process on this issue. Now, don't forget, how much is matter in 40%? That's quite a lot. It also means that if you speak an argument only for a minute example, from a 6-minute speech example or 5-minute speech example, it may be too little. Argument should be a bit more meaty, right? Or much more complete that way. So the idea means that if you have an argument and you speak it and convince me in front of me for about, nearly 2 minutes something, or maybe 2.5 minutes with example of these things, it may be worth your time to do that, right? If your argument has enough value, right? But it's not about the number game. Some debaters sometimes throw out maybe 3-4 arguments out there and think the more arguments you have, the more chance you will win. And I don't agree with that. I do think the quality of the argument has much more essential meaning than actually the quantity of that argument, right? So definitely be clear which argument is more meaningful and put more time to actually put it in there, right? To put it in there and explain to me, what argument is logical, makes sense. Now, I want to add one point as well. A lot of times when you put arguments into this and match it in place, you forgot one thing. Where's that link? What's that one thing you forget maybe? The one thing you forget is to explain to me how that argument is essentially important in this debate. Make sense? You explain the argument. You throw me, I threw arguments, CJ, I throw it out there, right? But you've got a big point. Why is that argument important? Why the argument is valuable in this debate? Why does argument make sense? Why is argument is essential, right, in this debate? I think if you put that into the debate speech, it shows me as well that every argument definitely has less value or value. But to me, when I hear both sides of the team, I start prioritizing in my mind which argument comes in place, what the argument clash with what argument is fully developed, right? What argument examples it does. All these are like checklists to me, right? Essential importance, quality, depth, example. It's kind of like in my mind thinking what's happening in this idea going on, right? Make sense, guys? In the first part of matter, that understand? Now, definitely be able to link towards evidence, and your argument is also important. So be able to explain why this example makes sense and linking back to argument as more proof, right? Sometimes it doesn't mean you have only one argument and one example. You can also have 2 examples about to even more prove it, right? But don't forget, examples also have sometimes more than one stand, and also mean the opposition or your other side team may be able to actually use an example again as well. That's really possible, right? So be able to think about thoroughly what's the idea of this, what angle you're playing to persuade me, right? Yeah. So definitely that's kind of like the first thing would matter. Now I want to be able to show you a link here going on, right? And that actually is a link about the 3 rules for debate. So definitely I will be able to share this idea first. Okay, so give me a second here to share a browser here going on. Give me a second. And this idea actually is a friend of mine, right? World champion of debating, right? You actually order YouTube as well. Okay. And let me show the video. Is the sound coming out, guys? You hear the sound? Is it good?
The tradition of good argument that I'm trying to advocate for is very much rooted in history. It goes back all the way to antiquity, where in ancient Greece, the ability to make your point persuasively, to engage other citizens in discussion and debate, was seen as a kind of a requirement of citizenship, that it's what it meant for us to govern ourselves. And that developed through tea houses and pubs and coffee houses in London, where while the debates of Parliament were going on, citizens would gather and have the same debates between themselves. That tradition kind of carries forth in the United States with a lot of the founding fathers starting debate clubs in colleges, viewing part of their role as leaders and as founders of a new country as instilling in the nation that spirit of debate. And though that tradition has become harder and harder to discern in our everyday lives, there have been periods in the history of the US and the history of democracies and the history of the world where those debates were a feature of people's day-to-day lives. One high-profile debate that comes to mind is the series of debates between the civil rights leader James Farmer and Malcolm X.
If a dark-skinned Puerto Rican went down to Mississippi, he probably would be lynched too. Spanish, he wouldn't be lynched.
These were a series of disagreements between people who were ostensibly on the same side, whose objectives were, in some sense, allied, but they were not shy about voicing their disagreements in really candid, strong, full-throated ways in the view of the public, knowing that the other side would respond respectfully, that they would be candid about the disagreements, and through that conversation, that they would be able to get somewhere they couldn't on their own. There are three lessons that I take away from the Farmer-Malcolm X debates. The first is the importance of training. In order for us to be able to host the kinds of public debates again that enlarges our understanding of what's possible, we have to start training. And we have to start training our young people. We have to train ourselves to be able to engage in those conversations. The second is the importance of format. It's striking how long they were given to make their points. Often, they would be given quite a long stretch of time to present their arguments with the knowledge that once they had spoken, the other person would speak and they would get another turn. The third thing that you see in those debates is the importance of having a relationship with the person that you're disagreeing with that's greater than just the disagreement itself. By introducing the family to one another, by seeing the other areas of life, by doing other things together, you can often enlarge the possibility of what you do within the debate.
I find myself in so much agreement with Mr. Mondale.
Debates are only as good as the information and the knowledge and the skills that debaters bring to it. One of the more concerning things that we see at the moment is people's information diets not being sufficiently varied, not being sufficiently rich to sustain the kinds of conversations that we want to have. We cannot allow the debates that we see on cable television to be a kind of a replacement for the disagreements that we should be having in our day-to-day lives. So our political leaders or our favorite media personalities can't be like avatars to whom we outsource the work of thinking for ourselves and having these conversations for ourselves. And I think in order for us to start building back the skills of good argument, we usually need to do it face to face. And we might need to do it in the absence of an audience to start with, so that we resist the urge to perform for an audience, but rather listen and respond to the person across from us. So it may well be that we can one day equip ourselves to engage in a better form of social media, but I tend to think the starting place has to be face to face, has to be maybe away from an audience to begin with, so that we're building one interaction at a time the skills that we have lost.
With videos from the world's biggest thinkers.
So that's kind of like Bo. He's a world champion, also one of my friends as well. I think we will share that because I think it's important to understand the fundamental level of why we actually debate and what the challenge we have here going on. And why I say that because a lot of time in debating, you're thinking that I gotta win, TJ, I gotta win, right? I gotta fight people going on. And I think all really talked about is our training means preparing yourself to be well-rounded, engaged in that practices, right? And showcase your ability in that way. But also, I think the last part about connecting right? I think it's very important because a lot of time in debate, you just think that I want to win the other side. I want to beat them, right? I want to be able to be persuasive. But in one big part that we judges are looking for is people being polite, also people be considerate or be understanding the other side, because we actually believe that debate that we talk about that this house is a parliament. It is a respectful location. It is an honorable place to be, right? And what's that idea? It's not just about you fighting or arguing into extent of emotionally bash each other going on, but it's being respectful. I want you to be gentlemen. I want you to be ladies, to be able to really showcase your intellectual, right? In the rationale that you have discussion. That's why I think example here. So example I can put here is that the girl on the side saying we have concerns that the opposition haven't considered the minorities of this issue. Even they have good intention, they there is more harm. They have more harm than good. Example, right? So the idea here is to showcase that it's not just saying that you're wrong, you're bad, not true, wrong, right? And saying that you're terrible. It's not a pointing game to argue and fight other side, but to be persuasive and convince me, saying that TJ, I've seen other team, they're not bad people. TJ, the issue I'm here is that they have not talked about this issue. Example, they haven't considered these minorities. Example, I think these are very essential issues and concern and problems we have here, right? On the government side, they may say the government team want to change, right? We totally agree, right, and honor their vision, but we don't think their approach is the right way, right? So it is saying that we're not saying that we agree with them. We're saying that they are people, they are a team that have been thoughtful about this, but we're also thinking what they want to do will not happen, right? So the idea of being polite, having honor, right, in this way, I think is very important in the process. Do you guys see a screen now, right now, guys? Do you see a screen? Okay, perfect. So this is definitely a point I think is more important, and it's also very related. So the argument you present yourself and reflects them going on has to be polite. That's my whole point, right? And the polite moment I'm having here is that to be able that inclusive, be more persuasive. If your argument is so great, but you're so aggressive and you're also so fierceful, it may not affect your argument perspective, but I feel it affects your persuasion of that argument. And that becomes another part in self going on. It talks about manner, right? Manner in the process here talks about style, right? How to deliver your speech. Now, definitely being polite is not a part of, it'd be a slash part of manner. It's also a slash part of manner, I believe so. Because manner, it talks about how vocal, body language, how engaged you are with the audience example. Really, all this is so important to think about how you will actually be able to be persuasive, right, to them going on. So a lot of times, my problem with debaters sometimes that they're so active and they're so energetic and they're so powerful, and that's great, guys. But the biggest problem is that when you use that energy to be more emotional than logical, I think that's a problem. A lot of times, debaters like us love passionate speeches. But if those speeches are so passionate but not logical, we can't score them as well, right? So it becomes a problem at end. I think all judges for us rather see the argument first and use your persuasion, your body language, your pitch, your tone of sound, and really showcase yourself why you really have this belief in you of why the argument is so important. And that, I think, is a key thing here. A key thing is you really must tell the judge that you really believe in this, right? And that belief in that argument, I think, comes out in manner, your eye contact, your verbal, your voice, your confidence, right? This way, you speak clearly with authority. You confirm you know this very well, right? You're engaged, your eye contact, your gesture. You have different points in clearly. Example, point 1, you explain this idea, right? Point 2, point 3, you're trying to navigate yourself with the argument and your manner to be engaged with the adjudicator, right? Be present in the room, example, right? Definitely when you have a point, you could actually have a more higher tone, example, right? Pause a little bit to make the judge think, example, right? Be able to have more larger vocal. All this are actually the arts of the debating process going on. and how you guys can actually engage, right? Have this feeling and vibe that extent. Now, definitely you're gonna practice. When you're not able to be, if you're practicing in your mirror with your friend example, be really helpful. Practice make perfect, honestly. When I started debating 20 years ago, I think the Japanese teams were not so competent in language, but they have so much great ideas. And they took them a decade example that right now you go to Japan to the tournament, they speak perfect English, so fluent and so amazing. And that's I think a great example for being practice makes perfect. And I think only saying for us example, definitely accents may make things sound easier, right? But it doesn't make the mainstream. So it means that if you have a Vietnamese accent or even a local accent, don't worry, right? It means that the majority of what you say, the argument, is still very important. We agree with that. But definitely if you speak not clearly, then speak slowly, example, right? There not need to be rushy or speak fast. A lot of times when you see other teams speaking fast, you think, oh my God, I gotta speak fast too. If not, I will not be able to cover as much. But I really think about that, think it through, relax a little bit, and slowly go back to English again, right? I always kind of like speak out about, let me step back a little bit. Let me be able to kind of like help you about what are the key points. They say example. I always kind of felt like, we also rushing all these things moving forward. Let's take a break here. Let's think about it. Let's talk about this thing. So I kind of like that viewpoint of being able to take manner happen going on, right? Pause effectively for emphasizing on different topic also help, and being expressive to make your speech lively also important too in that way. So definitely this kind of like another thing to think about, another 40%. Now definitely matters 40%, manners 40%, 80%, right? They're not clearly half, guys. If you speak a beautiful speech, right, and there's no matter, I don't think you get full 40 out of it. I really think. I think honestly, manner is coexist in matter. When you are being persuasive as well and being engaging, I think the entire 80 becomes much more meaningful holistically in that extent. That's what you can think about as well. How to become comparatively between manner and matter. Am I a stuff, not engage, not standing straight, not moving myself, put argument? There's some manner there, right? Between the language you speak, the fluency, etc. Partly, but the whole package is about the words are fluent, your body language, your interaction, your tone of voice, all this inclusive. I think me and my show importance of why the argument may be more interesting to hear about. And I gotta say, you don't want to just kind of, we are trained to listen to you, right? We're not going to ask questions, we're engaged, we would take notes on that, essentially that way. But definitely you're going to help us as well to make the debate interesting, exciting, all these things. And that's why we really hope you think about this, right? How I make my judge be excited about us, be able to hear us more, example, right? Think about the different things further ahead. And I gotta say, that's the thing. You want to be able to look at us and see how are we exciting, engaging, and how we want to engage, respond in that process, right? In the manner idea. Now we talk about matter 40%. Let's have a small video here, right? This is an exit speaker. I want to show you some examples between without body language and with body language, right? Let's have an example here.
Hi everyone, look, so excited to be here to talk about the core vocal foundations of great communication. It's vital that you learn to apply the things you learn, otherwise you will not be able to amplify the best parts of who you are. Hi, great to see you all. I'm so excited to take you through some of the core vocal foundations. And as we deep dive and we apply these, it will help you amplify the best parts of who you are. Which was better? We don't need to debate it. And they've done extensive research that people who use their body language are perceived as being better leaders. And we're all leaders in some
You agree, guys?
place
Does that
in
make
our lives.
sense? So it looks like that for sure, definitely that people does have no body language stuff thing going on, may have less belief in themselves, for example. They may have great belief, but they are perceived more or less, they don't have great belief among themselves, not only, but me and the judge look at you, example, like, you're not so confident, are you, of your saying, make me doubt further ahead, but definitely be able to get out there, right? Okay, that's a video I'm looking at. Next part is method. Met, for sure, definitely talking about structure and strategy of your speeches. And this is a big part because a lot of times you may think at 20% TJ is not that much. Don't worry about it. I think you have to. Because if I can't follow your speech, it's not clear, it's not structured, I don't see example where the point is example, it may have problem me to follow it up, right? So definitely arguments are great logically, right? But they're not structured. I can't understand in full. It's kind of sad, right? That's why sometimes people, why I lost, TJ? Well, because your argument was great, I felt, but I couldn't get all of it. I wasn't sure what we were saying, example. I couldn't follow your speech, example, right? So definitely a clear structure important. I tell young debaters all the time, if you want to be able to help your debaters to be able to have a clear structure, one big easier way to say it is that, TJ, let me give you my introduction. Let me give you 2 arguments, right? Let me show you my first example of this argument example. Let me give you a summary at the end. You can signposts. Tell me exactly where are you in now. Help the judge. And means that the debaters have to be able to pinpoint the different locations to really help the judge going on. In this tournament, there are quality judges. We assure you this way, but also younger, less experienced, and older experienced judges for sure. That's why you may not know who you meet, so you're gonna be able to help the judge as much you can in the process. Help him judge. That's why we think that's why the third speech in the debate is called a bias adjudication. It means that you'll be able to help me judge or persuade me further ahead about, TJ, this is what I've seen, this is what they've spoken, this is what they, etc. That kind of helps me think further and look at my notes example. Did I miss this, right? Did I forget this point example? Should I go back to this going on? So definitely this kind of helps you really much make the entire speech much more clear in this process. Strategic argument. Definitely when you prioritize arguments, rebuttals, it really must showcase what you're thinking, right? And definitely when you structure it well, with limited time, you can't speak everything, guys. You gotta start picking and prioritizing what makes the most sense, right? What is most valuable? What's most important to get out there, right? And that's why you'll be able to think about your teammate and work with them going. Time management, definitely in one speech, your time. Definitely you start thinking importantly to speak, right? How to speak it out and be able to think about, how much time I have. Because in every debate speech, you have a rebuttal, right? You have also arguments, right? You also have examples. You also have summaries, right? So definitely we think about, how we manage this going on. What are the most important things in the debate in the process? I would already say rebuttal is important, argument is important, right? These main 2 things. If you don't summarize at your end, maybe your next speaker can do that for you, example, right? If you miss your battles, maybe you would actually get a friend to help you, example, right? If your argument is so important, but you also miss out some part of it, you may need your other friend to help you enhance it further. It's a team dynamic. So definitely it's not the end of the world when you miss some part of it. You're gonna be able to work with your team to be able to find a way, how do I recover, right? How do I actually get back to this going on? Now, when you think about it, what are rebuttals? Rebuttals are point as well when you are engaging, right? Team this and team this are clashing each other. You don't tell me why you won. You only say that I clash. I clash doesn't mean you are winning, right? So that will explain to me why your argument, why your topic is higher, better than the other side. Again, politely, right? Don't forget, you are a gentleman, you are ladies. You have to be intellectually engaged, right? And be responsive that way, right? Definitely, I would do this. When I'm doing debate on stage, I would definitely outline my speech. I don't write it in an actual paragraph format. I'll kind of outline in bullet points, right? Kind of understand like, okay, what are the key ideas that I have to roll in? I switch them sometimes. I kind of arrange them in that bullet point idea. I start looking in my mind that I can understand which part goes first, second, third. I kind of logically kind of frame reason that, right? Definitely I'll allocate time. I would definitely put some rebuttals that are also meaningful, have more time in that place. Some rebuttals have less engagement, less. I maybe put some more less time in. I have to think. Definitely, there are some parts that have to have more time and less time. You gotta be able to think about which part will make that happen going on in that process, right? And definitely be adaptive. That sometimes you start planning it out, but then other side talks something else, doesn't clash. You're able to change your note right away, to adjust things going on, right? That process. So the dynamic of the thing is also a big part of structure as well. How you're actually being dynamic enough into the actual debate and very much resolving, right? Engaging other team as much as you can in the process you have here. Again, a short video here.
Do we need that? Guess we did. So what things do you need to keep in your speech to stop it from collapsing? And what can you take out without destroying the foundations? Team line? Nah, don't need that. Can you have a strong speech without structure? That looks like structure was structurally integral. Verbal crutches, ums and ahs, easy to take away. Mistakes, stumbling over words, a bit of a pause, might have a bit of a wobble, but you're all going to be okay. Good manners important, but is it necessary? Yes. Yes, it is. Personal examples may be useful for public speaking, but we can get rid of it for debating. Let's take it out. Catching openings, the first thing your audience hears. Do we need that? Guess we did. No one ever does a perfect speech every time. What's important is to make sure that you take on feedback, rebuild, and do your best next time.
It's very clear explaining to me that, you can't, there's no ultimate perfect speech. You gotta be able to readjust yourself, get feedback, and get onto your feet to structure it much more again. But definitely there's essential things there. Think about what are important and what's not important, or what you have to kind of like mix and match again in that process you have here, right? As a Prime Minister's speech of the World School Championship in 2019, as I was a community historian as well, against India and Canada, right? The House will grant glorification of soldiers as heroes. I went to this speech, right? And I'll give you the scores as well that I kind of gave her in the speech as well. I want to let you see, right? See the speech, hear it out first, the Prime Minister's speech, okay? You guys ready? Let's see some D's, please, for debate. Some D's. You guys are ready to hear the speech? D's. There's 40-something people. Hello. Do we have some D's here, guys? Write some D's in your chat. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you so much. Good work, guys. Helen, thank you so much. Thank you. debate so much. Okay. So let's kind of hear a speech first, guys. Okay.
Okay, thank you everyone, and welcome to the final of the World Schools Debating Championships 2019.
Is this audible? Fractured bones become fractured communities. When you can't call out a soldier that sexually assaulted you in Iraq, can't call out a general who may or may not have ordered this as a war tactic, because in a world where you think soldiers get everything right, that's when everything starts to go wrong. The glorification of soldiers strikes at the most vulnerable. We're not willing to stand for that on proposition. What is our stance in this debate? 4 things. Firstly, glorification meets often 3 critical criteria. Firstly, it means looking at soldiers as righteous and perfect. Secondly, it means seeing them as heroic, brave, courageous in a way you don't associate with any other profession of people that is working hard. Thirdly, it means looking at them as the embodiment of a nation, the representatives of your country, the people that you want when you're talking about what your country means to you, the people that are the face of it. This often looks like massive award ceremonies for soldiers, military parades, posters saying, serve your nation, this is how you can save us all. Secondly, this is a debate about a narrative, and glorification critically is about simplification. Opposition can't come up here and say, we're going to have an incredibly nuanced narrative where you say, some soldiers are glorified, some soldiers are not. Glorification is about a blanket narrative of what individuals in society believe and what their first instinctive response is when they listen to the name of a soldier. But thirdly, our alternative on proposition is respect. That is the same kind of respect you have for people like doctors who are working long shifts in the ER, but you're not glorifying them. The same kind of respect we think you should have for people like teachers and firefighters. The same kind of respect we on Proposition have for our debate coaches who have missed weeks and weeks of sleep to get us to these finals. This isn't a debate, fourthly, about whether soldiers deserve this or not. It's not a debate about whether they should be, whether in a vacuum, we would rather they be glorified or not. This is a debate about what the impacts of that glorification are on soldiers, on the wider society, on the most vulnerable. 3 arguments then from Proposition. No, thank you. In the first speech, firstly on worsening military action. Secondly, why this hurts current and prospective soldiers. Thirdly, why this leads to toxic nationalism that worsens politics. On the first argument, worsening military tactics. We're going to talk about 3 different types of interventions in this argument. Firstly, humanitarian interventions. Notice critically, these are the only kinds of interventions that actually need people on the ground. Why is that the case? In order to do things like provide aid, to do things like bring food packages, to do things like bring people out of burning buildings, humanitarian interventions are the kinds of interventions which require soldiers to be on the ground. So in a word with glorification, in a word where soldiers are your heroes, where soldiers are the most important people within that country, one soldier from your nation can't be weighed against brown and black people from around the developing world. No, thank you. Which means these kinds of interventions become much less likely when images of body bags become much more powerful for people because of, say, as we've seen in the past with places like Mogadishu, when the intervention leading in some soldiers being hurt meant that the US didn't go into Rwanda, means that the only kinds of interventions which crucially need soldiers on the ground, no thank you, are the kinds of interventions which decrease massively. But secondly, on interventions in self-interest, we want to note, importantly, that these interventions do not require people. So you can act in your self-interest militarily by doing things like carrying out drone strikes in Syria. These are not interventions for which you need boots on the ground. These interventions become more and more likely at the point at which the soldiers and in extension the military is glorified as an actor which can do no wrong. But even if in these kinds of interventions, which are much rarer in status quo, and they do occur anyways, if you do send soldiers in these interventions, what happens is they act with more impunity and more impunity. They see themselves as people who cannot be hurt. When you're going to come back to your nation, no matter what you do, with flags waiting for you, people that are going to be proud of you no matter what, you're going to be seen as the hero no matter what you do. At that point, it is easier for you to sexually assault someone within that region, easier for you to carry out a war crime, easier for you to shoot someone without having to think twice about it, considering that you know that no one will say anything. You're still going to be their hero. You're still going to be the soldier that was fighting for that country. All of this means is that soldiers, in the interventions that they do go to, become much more likely to act in ways which are damaging to people on the ground. No, thank you. But thirdly, military action as a result of nationalistic fervor becomes much worse. So, for instance, in a border skirmish between Eritrea and Ethiopia in the border town of Badme, if a few soldiers are hurt, retaliatory action becomes far more likely in a way which is damaging to people on the ground. What this means is that the goal of glorification leads to the worst in war. On Proposition, we recognize that there are different kinds of wars, but the glorification of soldiers hurts each and every kind of them. On our next argument then, why this hurts soldiers. Notice crucially that most soldiers in status quo, in a minute, are the kind of people that are poor, uneducated, not necessarily people that want to, think that this is an option which is, say, the best for them economically, but the kind of people who are pressurized into this, coerced by governments, under the saying that this is the only way for you to serve your community. Before I move on, yes.
What do you think is going to be the likely counterfactual on your side of the house when we don't glorify them?
We said that in our stance itself. We think it's likely to be respect, the same way we have for many other people of different professions that serve some valuable community function, but aren't seen as heroes. All right then, on hurting soldiers. This glorification increases the ability of governments to coerce these individuals in a few ways. Firstly, through increasing recruitment. This means that when there is more political capital for increasing and strengthening, increasing the number of soldiers in the first place, when you see these people as heroes, as the only way for you to protect yourself, no thank you, then countries in themselves want more and more soldiers and are likely to increase the number of people they want to recruit in the first place. Secondly, it means more and more posters saying join the military, this is how you can save that country. More and more people being pushed into joining the military, even if they had other options locally, whether that be working at a local school, working in construction, all of which we argue are going to be much better than the military. Thirdly, because things like their family, things like their community, because of seeing these military military parades are often forced into believing this is the only way their sons can bring glory to that nation. Here's why that's bad. The military is in itself a bad employer and will always be so. Firstly, because you have to do things like kill people. This isn't something you need to do in any other profession. Being a soldier is really, really difficult. We're assuming that the next speaker is going to tell you more about all the difficulties soldiers go through. That's exactly why we don't want more and more people, especially the most vulnerable, having to enter this industry in the first place. Secondly, militaries get to justify incredibly harmful practices by saying this is training for the future. Even if your training means you are living in terrible beds, you're not getting fed properly, this is what wars are like. Don't worry, that'll be fine. Means that militaries often get away with terrible conditions. We recognize that militaries are a necessary evil. That is not a reason to coerce more and more people into joining this institution, especially if they would not have chosen so otherwise. But the glorification of soldiers also makes militaries much worse because they get less and less accountable in a way which hurts these very soldiers themselves. It is harder for you as an individual soldier to call out abuses in the military, to say this general was doing something which was deeply damaging to me. I have not received proper food for a month, at the point at which soldiers in themselves are glorified. We have seen this in countries like India, when individual soldiers have spoken against military structures, but because of the glorification of soldiers, and which often concentrates at the top, they are the ones who are punished in the first place for saying that if you are truly heroes, how dare you protest? If you are truly heroes, then you shouldn't be bringing shame to the institution of the military. This also enables the military to do things like set up independent structures, independent military tribunals, which means more and more people within the military get hurt. So women in the military becoming less and less able to do things like report sexual assault within the military. The glorification of soldiers strikes at the most vulnerable. We oppose that.
So, I watched this speech. I was there as well. I think I loved the clear structure. It was so clear. She actually be able to provide us. We're going to start the argumentation. We have 3 points here going on. Number one is like this. So you can really follow her. She has a very strong accent, Indian accent, but that's fine with us because we can understand it very clearly, right? She was very polite. With the POI said, no, thank you. I'll take that later example. There was a bit of engagement to that. Sometimes people say that's like sit down or, no, that thing. I mean, the politeness, you can really feel that she's like a diplomat, right? She's kind of like a politician, an adult to probably be conveyed and persuaded that way, right? She was very considerate, thoughtful, right? He showed understanding of how she cares about soldiers and not just to be Buddhist for this way. It was easy to understand. The language she used also was very much simplified. I was able to actually convince and persuade, right, that way. Engaging in the delivery, so definitely eye contact, body language, and all these things, right? Okay, so I really like the speech. Question I have now, you guys, and you can kind of help me write down your score example. In 100 points, how many points do you give her? Wow, okay, below average, Ken, okay? Anyone else? Anyone else? Write down a number, please. I won. Does this my friend? 8-ish, okay? Keep writing. 98, okay? Okay, who else do we have, guys? Come. 90s, okay, 77, okay. So the point actually she got was about 89, I think. 89 to 90, I think, at that time. So, so got 89. So 89. I was grand final, and actually India won the tournament. India, that team, won the world championship. They were world champion of the World Debating Championship, that process. She got 80 and 88. 87, 88, 89, that process going on, right? So that's kind of like that was her speech, right? In the itself. Okay, so definitely when you are listening clear enough in that process, and that's kind of the speech level engagement you have in that way. So definitely I would recommend you to watch great speeches, go into YouTube, be able to watch, simulate, right? To be able to actually learn from great speakers. I think the easiest way to do so is to watch the grand final, okay, of World School Debating Championship. Okay, so definitely you type that inside. Oops, sorry. Let me just help you here. Championship, yeah. When you search that on YouTube or any web browser basis, you should find a lot of good videos there. There have been so many. This is just one of them, but definitely you start looking through those things could really help you further ahead to practice and simulate. Now, definitely when you watch great debates example, it helps you think as well on what are you looking at, and you can actually be able to practice and simulate your style as well in that way. So definitely this world champion in India 2019, high level speech for sure. Hopefully you'll be able to simulate as the example going on, right? Okay, so we have a few more slides left, not that much, but definitely want to open some Q&A. You can answer a question that way as well. But there are common mistakes and how to avoid them, right? So definitely one, a lot of times people use big words. And I gotta say, it's just how it is in debates sometimes, even in world school tournaments, a lot of them use very premium, high-level terms itself. And I think the biggest thing is that if you don't understand those terms, a lot of times we don't understand those terms as well. A lot of times in debate example, we also were taught not to assume. So not to assume means that we will not assume or kind of like use our personal knowledge and understanding into that idea, right? So definitely think about that as well, right? To be able to think about how would you actually be able to kind of make it simple, make it powerful, make it impactful, right? I mean, understandable that way. Avoid using huge words, right? Sometimes huge word may make you sound intelligent, and that's great, guys. But the problem is that sometimes it's not going to be full meaningful, and you may have a problem that way, right? So I really recommend you think about that as well, and how you want to be able to think about to make that speech clear, understandable, connectable to people listening to you. But if you want to use big words, that's also fine. It's just that understand them well enough, be able to be persuasive, make it make sense, right? Logically is what that way, and kind of you want to do that in that process, right? Definitely monotone delivery is that if you don't have emotion, you're not speaking so exciting, all these things will also affect. Why? Because me as a judge, I'm a human being, right, guys? I listen to you, I feel like, this doesn't sound convincing, or I'm not sure this is actually real or not. You don't look confident. I don't think I'm confident in you too. So, the entire construct of confidence is, I think, a big part of this, because when you say something that may have some logic there, but if you're so much confident, I be able to believe, right? In that process. So I think definitely to think about that, right? For sure. So try to add on that sound, the pitch, the tone, the voice, the interaction this way, really much help you, right? In that process you have here, okay? Speaking too fast. A lot of time debaters, they love to speak fast. They're like, very fast. I would that speak fast is okay, but also if you make it clear. If you speak fast, it is not clear, and we don't understand it, you may not get points. Big problem, right? So definitely I would already saying speak slowly if you need to the audience, right? To the judge, right? To everyone. Make sure your argument is clear enough, right? If you have time, you can repeat it if you want. But if you speak so fast and we don't understand the meat, the glitch, the material of it going on, you may have a problem that way, right? So definitely think of that in that process. Engaging with your team after speaking. What does that mean? A lot of times, some young debaters, they speak and they sit down and they sleep. They don't engage further ahead, right? They don't have your teammate example. That makes me think further, you're not fighting. You're not, fighting with that process. And a big point is that if you start be able to show your engagement, TJ, I'm active. I'm going to work this off. I'm going to be able to go for POIs. I want to be able to ask these questions. It shows me you're in the game. And judges have more difficulty to give the loss. I mean, honestly, guys, if you are feeling you're losing, do you think judges feel as well? Yeah, we also feel too as well. So you have to make the judge confident saying that, let me look at my notes again. Let me be sure that you guys lost or not lost. You understand? You'll be able to be really confident saying that I'm gonna fight this all the way, right? And keep going that process. I think that really much helps me also reconfirm myself that this debate is still alive, it's still active. Let me look at my notes, confirm again, right? But if you're like, I think we lost, and just like not engage, and just like sit down there and look at your phone, or like just like draw pictures, and like all you guys are doing that example, I think the judge have a more easier sense to like give you the loss, right? Because you are showing us you're losing that extent. So don't do that. Be active, be energetic, fight for us. right? Showcase your ability out there. Speech 1 is done. Come back and work with your teammate. This rebuttal, that engage, POI, respond, all these things, right? Lack of strategy. A lot of times when you are thinking about this, you have a speech, you give a speech, but you forgot about that. You've got to change it to transform it, right? A lot of times, government start first, true. But with opposite has to be able to prepare for what comes in, what changes, right? So we're looking for that. If you're just giving a speech saying that I wrote 3 arguments, they wrote 3 arguments, and you speak it, but the debate's not clashing, it's not engaged, fighting, interest as well, and everything on, which one is more? Because a big part of debate is about engaging point of view. You have to find a way to fight that process, right? To engage that way, right? No, it's not in the prep time, Hannah. Actually, it's about more like when you're in the debate room and you're debating, right? And after you speak, you come back to your table, right? And you're just sitting there. That's a problem I'm saying. You understand, Hannah? It's more about, are you engaging with your friends in that debate moment you're having, right? I'm not looking in your prep room, don't worry. But definitely, there's someone be able to look at you in your prep room so you're sure you're not using things that we're not allowed to use, right? But definitely the point that we want to see further engage in that debate process as much as you can going on. So definitely be responsive, be engaging, be practical, change your plan, arrange your argument, maybe switch some argument first to make it dynamic. And that's the point, right? To be able to make it interesting in that process. Okay, that is already, we have talked nearly 52 minutes, okay? This is going to be Q&A session. Okay, so right now, you should ask questions to me if you want, and we'll be able to help you answer those questions, right? I've shown you the 40, 40, 20, right? What are we looking at in each part? I also gave you a speech as well, right? And to be thinking about that as well going on, right? About what kind of points you may get. Okay, so people are asking about the themes of debate. I think honestly, you can directly ask a question to the organization directly. I think I'm better to help you out, right? Okay, so definitely they are an average score. So I think average score usually it's going to be a standardization. An average score usually is a 75, right? There's an average score going. So example, if you come on stage and you sing a song and you sit down, usually you get about 60, 55, 60 points. Right, like that, and then that the average speed is like 74, 75, and extend, right? We haven't confirmed this honestly directly with the AshCore yet, but kind of the range bracket we have here. So usually the bracket. Usually we will never see 100 points as adjudicators, because that means that 100 points usually means it's God came down from heaven and spoke to you and be inspired, right? So in my 20 years of judging, I've never seen 100 points yet. Right? I don't think God has came down to earth yet and spoke to me in a speech yet. So there's also is a bracket going on extendedly, and that's where the bracket usually is about maybe 60 to 90 or maybe 88 example that way ideally, right? There are the World University Benjamin can actually promote to use the full extent, but that's university level, not for high school, not for middle school. It's a different format, right? So definitely, there's a larger range that way going. Yeah, people are asking me direct questions. They're not just ask me, just maybe ask in the chat box you want, right? One is that if we choose not to respond POI, will POI be taken off? I will say that POIs usually are encouraged, okay? And by the rules, usually you just actually take one POI, okay? So it's 2 ways, right? If you are speaking and you take one POI, there's a minimum requirement to do so. Now, ideally, if you don't take a POI in that speech, and how about you get point deducted? I will say that if your argument is so outstanding and valuable, I think it's more counted that way, right? But definitely, if you don't take any POI, if the other side is standing 10 times already, like 10 times, and you're not taking any one of them, we may be thinking that you may have to deduct a point maybe, right? If other side just standing 2 times, example, not so engaged, and you don't take them example, that may be okay. So it's not going to be a perfect science. It's like looking at, right? If I'm looking at you speaking, kind of like setting up 100 times and you're not taking anything at all, I feel a little bit of what's happening here, right? If there's just one time setting up and you're not engaging, then I feel like, okay, they're pretty much okay, no problem like that going on, right? So gotta balance it out. The rule says usually that one POI should be taken, right? That way. But if you, but it's more a suggestion and guideline towards the debate you look at that point, right? We might be example of 100 point. There's no 100 point skill. I mean, by 20 years, there's no 100 point. Like, I'm really sure I've seen, I've heard world champion in university, the max I've gone to, I think, is 92, 93 that I've seen, but I've never seen 100 point before in my life in 20 years. I may be different if you guys in the middle school debate in Vietnam by True North School and Point Avenue make that happen. I will tell the world that I found my 100 point in Vietnam, right? Okay. Does POI count in our time limit in the speed? Oh, yes. Well, POIs are 15 seconds, right? So 10, 15 seconds, it's going to spot there. When they hear it, they respond back. Now, definitely, there are different responding back POIs, but that's also included in your time, okay? It doesn't mean like time stops and time is resumed. No, it's actually continue in that speech you have there. How do you answer POI doesn't make sense? Well, firstly, one, you definitely ask them again to repeat the POI, but be careful because that may take your time as well, right? Two, try to understand it, get a sense. That's why I tell everyone that before you ask POI, you should write them down. Look at it clearly, and stand up and ask it. You can't ask more than 15 seconds, right? So definitely getting it clear as possible that way. Now, when you receive it, try to respond back, right? Sometimes, I'll be tricky with this, people start saying that they have already responded in arguments, so can. Sometimes they have people that, I have no more time, I'll get my friend to answer it. Also possible as well. So when you get a POI, you're gonna be able to think, how would you respond, engage to it going on? But don't forget, the debate, if you answer, like if you have 10 POI and you take all of them, that's also bad, right? Because the debate is about the argument, the rebuttal, the response, right? Not just that's accepting POIs that way. Are we allowed to research in the debate? Well, don't forget, right? In the debate, usually there are no printed material, there's no internet usage at all. So you have to be able to use your knowledge and understanding, right, in the debate format. You just can't like start typing your phone and in that debate round. That's not permitted. Okay, so definitely it's about you having understanding. But if you start writing down different logics, doing a mind map in that debate, that's possible, right? I actually do that often. When I start hearing argument, I start scratching, drawing, and trying to connect things in that speech. That's kind of like my linkage research that I'm doing that way, right? And executive speeches, I would say, usually, right, it's kind of like 30 seconds. It's an introduction, why we're here, what's this important. About 2 minutes is your argument, right? 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. You have about 1 or 2 arguments, that's about 4 or 5 minutes, right? And your 30 seconds is your summary. So, okay, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, something. 2 minutes something is your main material. You have POI in the middle, maybe another minute, maybe, or another 30 seconds, and you have another 30 seconds to summarize. So it is possible to do the balance here going on, right? That process. But definitely look at your stopwatch, speak, link it together, make it meaningful that way, right? The process. Is there anything to extend the speech? Can you give tips to improvement? And is there any way to extend? Well, definitely I would say this, right? I mean, if sometimes I gotta say you run out with what you say, right? I repeat myself sometimes. I give more examples, right? You see, my thing is this: 5-minute speeches, the bell will start at 5, right? So you have 1 minute speech, and then you have the POI, right? The 5th minute, those are my time lot. I usually tell my kids to always stay in the debate in that timeline. Stay until you get the second clap. The second clap gives me more that the more meat is mostly done. That's your last minute, right? You can give me a summary a little bit at the end. So try to stretch, speak slowly, give examples to get to that minute. If you don't get to 6, at least get to 5, right? That's where we want to be. If you get less than 5 example, your scores will be affected, right? Because you come up, you spoke only for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, the points may be affected. So then you want to be able to stay there, show confidence, speak there, and to the point of the time. Now, if you don't get to 6, it's okay. Honestly saying, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, it's really good. 5 minutes, right? Also very good, right? But if you go for 6:20, 6 minutes, 20 seconds, it's great because you use the time fully. But you should not extend until 6 minutes, 30 seconds. So at 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 minutes, 20 seconds, and then later on becomes clap, 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 clap. Means try to kick you out, right? So manage your time properly, right? What to say and all these things going on in the process. Okay, further ahead. So can we use our research material prepared in debate? You can't. So in the rules up, you should definitely have research material. Okay, about that, right? But in the prep room, we have to confirm this again, right? Because we are trying to guide on the process on what is allowed, what not allowed. Okay. But definitely you are not permitted. You can, in the debate itself, you can actually bring your material out, start reading and researching stuff like that when someone's speaking. You can do that for sure. But you cannot use printed material on the stage. You're going to be able to actually have only written material on the stage. So there are some rules there going on, right? If our team can make up a POI question for opposition, does our team get point deduction? I would say that you'll not get deduction, okay? But I do think that you'll get less engagement. For sure, definitely, it shows engagement. So the point is that if you can't, I would really hope you try to stand up, try to engage, right? And I think that's a big point here going on. So definitely think about that, how to think, how to respond, how to engage that process, right? Is it an automatic point action? No, it's not. I would say it shows me much more that you're interactive, right? Engage that process. Okay. Okay. So printed material, usually when I do an example, I bring all my stuff there, all these booklets of material, I have all this stuff, right? But I can use it in some part time, right? So definitely in my prep time, all these things. But at the end of the day, you can use the stuff on the stage, okay? It's going to be you and me as a judge listening, engage the process, and that's it, right? In the process. So yeah, that's, I think about 10 minutes time, Johnny, that we need a Q&A. But definitely if kids want to ask more questions, please, we would love to hear them as well. So you could actually ask questions to us, email Bonnie or the group there, they'll pass out to me example, I can reply back to them as well going on, right? But the point now, I think you have a few weeks, you have still time to work hard, practice, prepare yourself, and be the best you can. I say this debate tournament is a great platform to kind of be great leaders and great storytellers. In the world today, I think communication, as again, we're looking for mature, polite debaters that can be intellectual, can be engaging, and have meaningful discussion with your friends. We're not here to fight, to argue. We don't use word to bully people. No, all that stuff we're not okay with, and we do not encourage it, and also we punish it as well going on. So I hope you guys are the best. Any questions, just pass it to the Orcom, and I'll answer them on. But that's me. Thank you so much.